Welcome to Carl Jung Therapy, where psychology meets the soul. Explore the unconscious, confront the shadow, and awaken your true self. You think being an empath is a gift, but what if I told you it could be the very thing silently destroying you? Not because you're broken, but because you're wide open, emotionally exposed in a world that often doesn't care who bleeds as long as someone does. You feel everything, the sorrow in someone's voice, the tension behind their smile, the chaos they pretend isn't there. And instead of walking away, you absorb it, you carry it, you heal it. But at what cost? Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And for empaths, that terror often lies not in the darkness of others, but in their own unconscious shadow. Because buried beneath all that compassion is a wound, a need, a hidden hunger to be seen, to be needed, to be loved, even if it means losing yourself entirely in the process. This isn't just about sensitivity, this is about survival, about the psychological pattern Jung warned us of, the danger of projecting your soul onto others, mistaking your own unhealed pain for purpose, and calling it love. Today, we go deeper than comfort. We step beyond the light. Because the truth about empaths is not soft, and it's not pretty. It's darker than you think. There is something most people never realize about those who feel everything too deeply. They see the tears before they fall. They hear the sorrow in a voice that still smiles. They carry the ache of rooms they walk into, and sometimes they do not even know why they suddenly feel so heavy. The world calls them empaths, as if that word alone explains the magnitude of what they endure. But I tell you now, it is far more dangerous than that, for what seems like a gift of sensitivity is often the silent sacrifice of the soul. You see, when a person walks through life absorbing the emotions, fears, traumas, and energies of others, they are not simply feeling, they are unknowingly becoming containers for what no one else dares to hold. The grief no one expresses, the rage no one admits, the loneliness masked by a smile. This is what the empath unconsciously inherits. And it is not always out of compassion. No, it is often a deep unconscious programming that was set long before they had words for it. Perhaps in childhood they learned that their safety came from reading the emotional weather of others. They had to detect shifts, anticipate moods, protect themselves by merging with the unspoken pain of those around them. And now, as adults, they do not know how to stop. They feel everything because once, not feeling would have cost them everything. But this is where the danger lies, because when you are constantly tuning into everyone else, you lose sight of your own soul. You forget what your joy feels like, because you've spent a lifetime carrying sorrow that was never yours. You mistake emotional exhaustion for love, and heaviness becomes your normal. You may think you are helping, but in truth, you are drowning, not because you are weak, but because no one ever told you that you do not have to suffer to love. The world's pain is vast, and the unconscious is deeper still. Empaths, if unaware, become open doors to this unconscious. They don't just take on a friend's sadness, they absorb ancestral wounds, cultural traumas, and the collective grief of humanity. And here is the truth most are unwilling to speak. The unconscious does not care how sensitive you are. If you do not know how to protect your energy, how to create boundaries, how to say no, it will flood through you like a storm through a broken window. And you will think it is your fault. You will think something is wrong with you. But there is nothing wrong. You were just never taught that your soul has limits, and those limits deserve to be honored. What happens then when you carry what isn't yours? Your nervous system begins to shut down. You feel drained in silence. You smile, but inside you're screaming. You begin to lose touch with your own emotional truth. You cannot tell where your pain ends and another's begins. And in this confusion, you begin to lose yourself. That is the most dangerous part, because once yourself dissolves into the emotional chaos of the world, you are no longer living. You are surviving on behalf of everyone else. And so I urge you, awaken to this. You must stop believing that feeling everything is love. It is not. Love is presence. Love is truth. Love has boundaries, and if you must carry the weight of others, do so only when your hands are free and your heart is full, not when you are already breaking beneath the pressure. You are not here to save everyone. You are here to become whole, and sometimes that means letting others feel their own pain, while you learn how to feel your joy. You do not owe the world your suffering. You owe your soul its return. It is not cruelty to walk away from pain that is not yours. It is wisdom. It is love of the highest form, because only when you are whole, only when you are conscious, can you truly help others. Otherwise, you are simply feeding the cycle, giving your energy to the very unconsciousness that keeps others asleep. That is not healing, that is entrapment. You were not born to be a dumping ground for what the world refuses to heal. You were born to feel, yes, but to feel with clarity, not confusion. To love with strength, not sacrifice. To give without disappearing, and that only begins when you stop being a container and start becoming a conscious presence. When you stop absorbing and begin transforming. When you no longer let pain define you, but instead let your truth free you. Let yourself feel, but let yourself be free. You may wonder why, so often, those who carry light seem to attract the deepest shadows. Why the most compassionate, the most open-hearted, the ones who mean no harm, are the ones constantly caught in the web of others' chaos? And the answer is not as comforting as we would like it to be. It is not merely because the world is unfair. It is not simply because darkness seeks to extinguish the light. No. The truth is more intimate, more confronting. The light you carry activates what others have buried. It stirs the sleeping wounds in their soul. It exposes what they have hidden from themselves. And not everyone wants to wake up. When your presence shines without defense, when your aura radiates warmth, gentleness, and emotional openness, it does not only attract those who are ready to heal, it also awakens those who are still deeply afraid of their own pain. Your energy becomes a mirror, and in that mirror others begin to see what they have denied for years. Their anger, their grief, their guilt, their helplessness. For a moment they recognize it, and in that moment they are forced to choose. Either they confront it, or they fight the one who reflected it. And many choose the latter, not because they are evil, but because they are afraid, and so they cling to you, or they attack you. They romanticize your presence, or they resent it. They want your light, but not the responsibility that comes with standing near it. And you, the empath, the open one, you take this personally. You think it is your job to make them feel safe. You believe it is your duty to help them heal, but you forget. When you step into someone's shadow without awareness, you are not helping, you are provoking. And not every soul is ready for that. You must understand. Your light does not only comfort, it confronts. It does not only heal, it reveals. It pulls forward what others have locked away. And while some will call this divine, others will call it dangerous. They will say you are too much, too sensitive, too intense, because it is easier to reject you than to face themselves. And if you are not grounded in truth, you will begin to believe them. You will shrink your spirit, you will silence your intuition, you will doubt your worth, all because your presence made someone else uncomfortable. But that discomfort was never yours to carry. There is a gravity to your being. People feel safe around you not because you fix them, but because you remind them of what they have lost. Their softness, their vulnerability, their soul. And yet this remembrance can trigger them. You see, the one who has buried his pain does not want to remember it. The one who hides behind control does not want to feel. The one who has made strength his armor will resist anything that dissolves it, and yet you arrive. Without trying, you bring it all to the surface. This is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to become conscious of it. Because when you do not realize the power of your presence, you will think you're the problem. You will think you're being rejected because something is wrong with you. But what is really happening is that others are encountering a frequency they have forgotten, something their soul recognizes, but their mind is terrified of, and in that terror, they may lash out, or they may pull you in too close. They may drain you without meaning to. They may wound you while asking you to heal them. And so I say to you, be vigilant with your light, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Not everyone who draws near deserves access to your soul. Not every wounded heart is ready to be held. Not every cry for help is an invitation for you to step in. There are some who will mistake your empathy for weakness, your compassion for compliance. There are some who will feed on your light because they do not yet know how to create their own. And if you are not awake to this, you will bleed without knowing where the wound began. You must learn to discern, not with judgment, but with clarity. You are not here to be a savior. You are here to be whole. You are not here to prove your goodness by being consumed. You are here to embody your truth, and let that truth decide who stays and who leaves. Let it be a filter. Let it be a shield. Let your light guide others, but never at the cost of dimming yourself. You do not owe your radiance to those who fear their own. The brighter you shine, the more shadows will dance around you. Let them. You are not here to chase them. You are here to remain the light. There comes a moment in the life of the empath when exhaustion no longer feels like a passing phase. It becomes a way of being, a constant low hum beneath the surface, a weight that cannot be explained, only endured. And what many fail to understand is that this heaviness doesn't always come from what they've lived through. It comes from what they're trying to heal in others. It's a silent erosion of self, born from a desperate attempt to mend what was never theirs to fix. This is the hidden danger of the empathic heart. Not that it feels too much, but that it forgets itself in the feeling. To merge emotionally with another, to truly feel what they feel, can be an act of profound compassion. But when done unconsciously, it becomes a slow disappearance. The empath begins to dissolve. At first it looks like love. You care, you want to help, you see their pain, and your soul aches to hold it. But something begins to shift. Slowly, you stop hearing your own voice. Your needs become less important, your emotions become harder to locate, and one day, you realize you don't know how you feel at all. You only know how everyone else feels. That is not love. That is emotional fusion. And it is a dangerous trap. Because in trying to be everything for someone else, you become nothing for yourself. You trade your identity for the illusion of closeness. You sacrifice your truth for connection. And this sacrifice feels noble at first. It feels like loyalty, like goodness. But over time, it becomes suffocation. You become the emotional crutch others lean on, the rescuer, the fixer. And while they begin to rely on you more and more, you begin to lose your inner ground. This is how many empaths live, constantly tuned in to the needs, moods, and wounds of others, while completely disconnected from their own soul. And yet they wonder why they feel so tired, so broken, so invisible. The world has taught them that love means giving until there is nothing left, that love is self-sacrifice. But I tell you now, that is not love. It is self-abandonment disguised as devotion. You cannot truly help another if you are not anchored in your own being. You cannot guide someone through the darkness if you have no center, no light of your own to return to. When you lose yourself in another's pain, you don't save them, you join them in drowning, and no one is healed in the process. Two lost souls clinging to each other is not healing. It is codependency. It is trauma bonding. It is unconscious wounding dressed up as spiritual connection. There is a reason this happens. Most empaths were trained, often in early life, to attune to others in order to survive. Perhaps you had to become the peacekeeper, the emotional caretaker, the one who could sense when something was wrong before it was ever said. And so you learned, if I feel what they feel, I can stay safe. If I carry their pain, maybe I'll be loved. If I fix what's broken in them, maybe I'll be enough. But that childlike strategy, though once protective, becomes destructive in adulthood, because now you no longer know how to separate who you are from who others need you to be. It is time to unlearn this pattern, to remember that love does not require you to disappear, that you can be present with someone's suffering without carrying it, that you can support without absorbing, that you can feel deeply without losing your ground. The empath's true strength is not in how much they can endure, but in how conscious they are of what they're holding and why. You must begin to ask yourself, why do I feel responsible for everyone else's pain? Why do I confuse being needed with being loved? Why do I feel guilty when I put myself first? These questions are the beginning of freedom. They pierce the illusion that love equals sacrifice. They dismantle the old programming that says you must be in pain to prove your worth, and they guide you back to your own inner truth, your own emotional landscape, your own self. Because until you reclaim that self, you will continue to repeat the cycle. You will continue to fall for those who are broken, hoping that if you can just love them enough, they will heal. But love is not healing when it costs you your soul. Love is not healing when it erases you. Real love sees you. Real love honors your boundaries. Real love does not ask you to bleed to prove you care. So I say this not in judgment, but in truth. If you are losing yourself in the wounds you're trying to heal, you are not helping, you are hurting. And that pain will only deepen until you turn inward and choose to become whole, not for anyone else, but for yourself. Because only a soul who has come home to itself can truly offer light to another. You cannot be the cure for someone else's emptiness when you are still filling the cracks in your own. Beneath the surface of the empath's kindness often lives a truth too painful to admit. It is not always just love that drives them to care so deeply. It is not only compassion that makes them offer everything they have, again and again. Often, there is something else, something hidden, something born in the earliest days of their becoming, a part of them that was once told, through silence or neglect, that love must be earned, that they must be useful to be wanted, that their value depends on how much they can give, how much they can endure, how much they can fix. This is the shadow no one speaks of, the hidden wound behind the empath's light, a silent, aching need to be needed, a hunger for significance, born not from ego, but from emptiness, from a child who learned that being good was the only way to be safe, from a soul who felt invisible unless they were saving someone. And so they became the caretaker, the one who understands, the one who listens, the one who absorbs pain and asks for nothing in return, not because they are purely selfless, but because they were trained to believe that this is how love is earned. This unconscious desire, to be essential, to be irreplaceable, is not evil. It is not selfish. It is a survival instinct formed in the heart of a child who never got to feel love just for being. And so, in adulthood, the empath continues this silent bargain. If I hold your pain, will you see me? If I make you better, will you stay? If I sacrifice myself for you, will I finally be enough? And all of this happens beneath the surface. No one sees it, often not even the empath themselves, because it hides behind kindness. It wears the mask of generosity. It disguises itself as love. But love does not need to be proven. Love does not demand exhaustion. Love does not require that you vanish to be worthy. And yet, The empath continues to pour from an empty cup, hoping that if they give enough, someone will finally give back. They keep choosing those who are broken, those who are chaotic, those who are in need, because those relationships give them a role, a purpose, a reason to stay. This is the unconscious seduction of suffering. It feels familiar, it feels like home, but it is not a home that nourishes. It is a home that drains. And still they return to it, because being needed feels close to being loved. And if love has always felt like sacrifice, then sacrifice becomes their identity. So they take pride in being the strong one, the one who never breaks, the one who always holds space. But inside they are breaking. Inside they are carrying not just the pain of others, but the pain of never having been truly seen. And that is what haunts them. Not that they give too much, but that no one ever stops to ask, what about you? What do you feel? What do you need? And the truth is, they don't know how to answer, because they've spent their life answering for everyone else. They've lost their own voice in the echo of other people's needs. They've blurred their boundaries so many times that they no longer remember where they end and someone else begins. But if they are to heal, truly heal, they must go into this shadow. They must look at the part of themselves that fears irrelevance, the part that believes that if they are not useful, they will be abandoned. They must grieve the love they never received and stop trying to earn it by saving others. Because no amount of fixing will ever fill the emptiness inside. No amount of being needed will ever replace the need to be loved for who they truly are. Without the mask, without the role, without the suffering. It is a terrifying thing to let go of this identity, to stop being the healer, to stop being the one who always shows up. But it is also liberating, because in that letting go, something else begins to emerge. The real self, the one who doesn't need to be needed to feel worthy, the one who knows they are enough, even in stillness, even when they are not saving anyone. And when the empath begins to choose themselves, not out of selfishness, but out of wholeness, they begin to love in a new way, a cleaner way, a freer way, no longer from desperation, no longer from fear, but from truth, from strength, from a place that says, I will walk beside you, but I will not carry what is not mine. I will love you, but I will not disappear for you. I will be here fully, only because I have finally chosen to be here for myself. Until you uncover the hidden desire to be needed, you will never understand why you keep choosing pain and calling it love. There's a pattern that plays out quietly in the background of many empathic lives, so subtle that it almost goes unnoticed. It's not always in the grand gestures or the visible acts of giving, but in the moments when they betray themselves silently, saying yes when they mean no, absorbing what hurts them because it helps someone else, becoming the anchor for those who have no desire to stand on their own. At first, this seems noble. It appears selfless. But look closer and you'll see something far more dangerous, an addiction to one-sided relationships, an unconscious loyalty to imbalance, where the empath is always the giver and the other is always the taker. And this is not simply because the world is full of takers. It is because the empath often confuses love with sacrifice. They confuse being drained with being connected. They confuse emotional labor with emotional intimacy. Because that's how it felt in their earliest relationships, when love came with conditions, when care meant performance, when presence depended on usefulness. So they recreate it in adulthood without realizing. They unconsciously seek out the same dynamic, the same imbalance, because it feels like home. But home is not always safe. Familiar does not always mean healthy. You see, when someone grows up believing that they must work for love, they rarely choose relationships where love flows freely. It doesn't feel real to them. It doesn't feel earned. And so, without meaning to, They become magnetized to those who are emotionally unavailable, broken, or unstable. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because suffering is the only place they've ever felt seen. They find comfort in rescuing others because it gives them a sense of identity, a purpose, a reason to stay. But this is where the pain begins to take root. Because in these one-sided relationships, the empath slowly begins to disappear. Their needs are sidelined. Their voice grows quiet. Their boundaries dissolve. They become so focused on the other person's healing, the other person's chaos, that they no longer know how to feel at peace in their own skin. And even when they recognize the imbalance, they stay. They tell themselves, "But I can't leave them like this," or "Maybe, if I love them enough, they'll finally see me." But the truth is, they are not staying for love. They are staying for the hope that their suffering will finally be enough to earn the love they've always longed for. This is the root of self-abandonment. The empath does not always realize they're doing it. It shows up subtly, in small compromises, repeated over and over until they don't know who they are anymore. It shows up in their exhaustion, in their resentment, in the quiet ache they carry, wondering why they always feel empty even when surrounded by those they care about. The answer is simple but difficult to face. They are pouring into cups that were never meant to be filled by them. And so the lesson becomes this: not every relationship is meant to be saved. Not every wound is yours to heal. And not everyone who leans on you deserves to stay. You must begin to ask yourself, does this relationship honor me? Do I feel seen in it, heard, respected? Or am I simply the one who holds space while no one holds space for me? Am I loved for who I am, or for what I provide? And perhaps most importantly, if I stop trying, would they still be here? These questions are hard. They reveal truths we've spent years avoiding, but they are necessary, because until the empath becomes conscious of their pattern, they will continue to repeat it. They will keep entering relationships that deplete them, hoping to find fulfillment, but fulfillment does not come from being needed, it comes from being met, from being chosen. Not because you heal someone, but because you are whole in yourself. To break this pattern, the empath must do what feels unnatural. They must choose themselves. Not because they are cold, or distant, or unkind, but because they finally understand that love is not proven through pain. Love is not measured by how much you endure. Real love is balanced. It is mutual. It honors both souls equally. And if that is not present, then it is not love. It is survival disguised as connection. This is the deeper work, the inner turning, the refusal to be anyone's emotional dumping ground, anyone's silent savior, the courage to say, "I will no longer participate in my own depletion, no matter how noble it looks." And in doing so, they begin to shift. They begin to rise. They begin to attract something different. Relationships where they are no longer the caretaker but the companion. Where love does not drain but restore, where they no longer have to disappear to feel valued. You are not here to be consumed by those who fear their own emptiness. You are here to remember your fullness and protect it. There is a quiet danger in believing that seeing the good in someone is the same as being safe with them. Empaths often fall into this trap, not because they are naive, but because their hearts are tuned to possibility. They look into wounded eyes and see what could be. They hear silence and imagine the words someone wishes they could say. They feel rage and believe it is just pain in disguise. And in doing so, they build a version of someone in their mind, an ideal, a potential, a future self that may never come to be. But they don't just believe in this version, they love it. They commit to it. They remain loyal to a person who does not yet exist. This is the shadow of empathy. The tendency to love someone for their light before that light has learned how to shine. To commit to their growth before they've chosen it themselves. To fall for their potential while ignoring the reality of how they show up now. It feels noble, it feels like faith, but it can quickly become self-deception. Because while you are loving the future version of them, you are suffering the present version. You are justifying emotional neglect, manipulation, or imbalance under the guise of, "But I see who they could be." And that is not love, it is projection. Projection is one of the most dangerous forces in relationships. It blinds you. It convinces you that someone is growing when they are not. It causes you to ignore red flags and painful truths because you are so in love with the idea of transformation. But transformation cannot be forced. You cannot grow someone who does not want to grow. You cannot awaken someone who is still in love with sleep. You cannot carry both your soul and theirs, and yet the empath tries. They stay in relationships far longer than they should, holding on to hope like a lifeline. Maybe next time, they say. Maybe if I'm more patient. Maybe if I love them just a little bit better, a little bit harder, they'll finally change. But love is not a spell. It is not a tool for fixing someone. And if they do change, it will not be because you sacrificed yourself to make it happen. It will be because they chose to face their own darkness. And that choice is not yours to make. The empath must learn that seeing someone's potential does not mean you are responsible for unlocking it. Just because you see who they could be does not mean you owe them your life while they refuse to become it. You can honor their possibility without making it your burden. You can love their light without setting yourself on fire to ignite it. Because real love is not about saving. It is about witnessing, supporting, encouraging, but never sacrificing your own well-being in the process. This is the hard truth. Many people will never become who you believe they can be. Not because they aren't capable, but because they haven't made the decision to evolve. And no matter how deeply you love them, you cannot make that decision for them. Love alone does not heal. Love alone does not awaken. Love is powerful, but it must meet willingness. If they are not willing, then your love becomes martyrdom. And martyrdom is not noble. It is self-abandonment in disguise. You must ask yourself, do I love this person? Or do I love the idea of who they could become? Am I connected to who they are now? Or am I in a relationship with a dream? If the answer is the dream, then you are not in love, you are in attachment. And attachment is not intimacy. It is not real connection. It is a longing dressed up as loyalty. So many empaths waste years waiting for someone to wake up, to soften, to see them, to choose healing. And in that waiting, they wither. They begin to forget what their own dreams feel like. They begin to shapeshift to fit inside a life that was never truly built for them. But you are not here to be a placeholder in someone else's transformation. You are not here to wait in purgatory while someone figures out if they're ready to meet you where you already stand. The moment you stop loving potential is the moment you begin to experience real love. Not the kind that asks you to bleed for its promise, but the kind that meets you now, in truth, in presence, in shared responsibility. You deserve that. You deserve someone who is already walking the path of becoming, someone who is not just dreaming of being better, but actively choosing it. Someone who does not require your pain as proof of your care. You are not here to wait for someone to become who they promised. You are here to become who you were always meant to be. There is a silent war many empaths fight, and it's one they rarely speak of. It is the inner struggle between compassion and anger, between wanting to understand others and wanting to scream, "What about me?" It is the unbearable tension of holding space for everyone else's pain while secretly drowning in their own. And though they are often seen as the soft ones, the kind ones, the light bearers, the truth is far more complex, because beneath the surface of the empath's open heart lies a shadow they rarely dare to face. It is the rage of being unseen, the bitterness of always being the emotional anchor, the hidden, festering resentment of having to be okay, even when they are breaking. This is the final layer, the dark truth no one wants to admit, that the empath's greatest strength can become their greatest curse. When empathy is unchecked, when boundaries are blurred, when emotional giving becomes a form of identity, something begins to rot, not in the soul, but in the spirit. They begin to feel hollow, depleted, trapped in a cycle of emotional overextension that masquerades as love, but is really a form of silent self-destruction. And eventually they start to wonder, who am I if I stop caring? Who am I if I say no? Who am I if I stop saving people? They fear that setting boundaries will make them cold, that walking away will make them heartless, that choosing themselves will make them selfish. But this is the illusion they've been trapped in. The belief that love must come at the expense of self, that to be good, they must always endure, that to be worthy, they must always give. And it is this belief that keeps them in relationships that drain them, jobs that use them, dynamics that exploit their sensitivity, because they have been taught that empathy means staying, no matter what it costs. But real empathy is not martyrdom. Real love does not ask you to abandon yourself, and healing, true healing, requires that you face the part of you that believes your worth is measured by your ability to tolerate mistreatment. Because as long as you believe that, you will continue to betray yourself in the name of connection. The journey forward is not about becoming less kind, it is about becoming more honest, more discerning, more aware of the difference between love and self-sacrifice, between compassion and codependency. It is about understanding that you are not responsible for everyone's healing, that you are not a sponge for the world's pain, that your sensitivity is a gift, but only when it is honored, protected, and directed with wisdom. And wisdom means knowing when to walk away, when to stop pouring into someone who only takes, when to stop excusing harmful behavior simply because you understand where it came from. Understanding is not the same as allowing. Compassion is not the same as permission. You can hold empathy for someone's wounds without making their wounds your responsibility. You can see the pain behind someone's cruelty without allowing them to be cruel to you. This is where the true transformation begins, when the empath learns that they are allowed to be whole, that they are allowed to protect their peace, that they do not have to carry the emotional weight of everyone they love. And when they do, something extraordinary happens. The anger begins to soften, not because it was wrong, but because it was heard. The resentment begins to dissolve, not because the pain was ignored, but because it was finally acknowledged. And in that space, the empath begins to return to themselves. They begin to feel again, not just the emotions of others, but their own. They begin to hear their own voice, their own needs, their own desires, after years of being drowned out by the noise of other people's suffering. And they begin to trust that they are worthy, not because they are useful, not because they are endlessly giving, but because they exist, because they are human, because their soul is sacred, even when it says no, even when it walks away, even when it demands to be held instead of always holding. You are not here to disappear for others. You are here to become so full, so rooted, so clear in who you are, that your empathy becomes an act of strength, not sacrifice. So if you are an empath, if you feel deeply, if you carry more than you speak of, if you've mistaken your pain for purpose, know this: you were never meant to be the world's emotional landfill. You were never meant to lose yourself just to be loved. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. But if it is not protected, if it is not guided by self-awareness and boundaries, it will turn against you. And in the name of love, you will abandon the very soul you were born to protect, your own. Stop making yourself small to soothe others. Stop calling it love when it's only survival. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to awaken. And the moment you stop betraying yourself to keep the peace, that's when real peace begins. Remember, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is Carl Jung therapy, where we journey inward to truly awaken. Like, subscribe, and keep exploring the soul. The answers lie within. Thank you for watching. Individuation begins with awareness. Begin yours today. Shadow, self, soul. Heal through understanding. See you in the next session. Your psyche is speaking. Are you listening? Until next time, every step into the unconscious is a step toward your true self. Don't forget, knowing yourself is the beginning of all healing. Keep diving deep. The soul knows the way. This is more than therapy. This is transformation. See you soon.